What's up, Army of the Z? For this top 10, we're taking you back to the golden age of arcades, the 70s and 80s. Those must have been simpler times, right? People wearing uncomfortable fabrics, but being happy, you know? A time when not everything was about making money, and games were made by hand in small shops by mom-and-pop developers. Except, it was all about the money, and there were already huge corporations involved. Even some of the first arcade machines made big bucks via those sweet quarters. So how many quarters do you think Pac-Man has made? A dump truck's worth? The answer may surprise you. Today's video is brought to you by NordVPN. Use the link in the description and save 75% on a 3-year plan. Switch to NordVPN to protect yourself today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Here's our top 10 highest grossing arcade games. Appearing in 1981 in arcades, Centipede was an instant hit. One of the things that made it stand out was the lack of violence. Sure, you do kill bugs, but nobody cares about them. Part of the success of Centipede came through its fan base. Almost half of the players were women, and reaching this audience made Atari a lot of money. Almost 56,000 Centipede cabinets were sold, and it made $115 million in total. That's a lot of quarters, 460 million to be exact. And if you were to lay these 460 million quarters on the road, end to end, it would amount to a distance of over 11,000 kilometers, or over 36 million actual giant centipedes. If you're a conscious car owner, you'd probably consider an oil change after driving this kind of distance. But if you don't want to change your car's oil ever, that's fine too. Because with this amount of money, you could just buy 178 fully loaded extended Rolls-Royce Phantoms anyways. The first game that was designed by Shigeru Miyamoto was also one of the first platformers ever, and also the first game to feature Super Mario, or Jumpman as he was called back then. After failed attempts to conquer the American market, Nintendo was left with a lot of unused radar scope machines. But Miyamoto came to the rescue with a budget of $100,000. And how much did that 100K turn into? 1.1 billion quarters, or about $280 million. That works out to be about 250 dump trucks full of quarters, coming from the 132,000 arcade machines. Or if we're speaking strictly Donkey Kong, that's about 20,000 barrels of quarters. Or 42,000 silverback gorillas in weight. That's right, Donkey Kong made an army of gorillas worth of quarters. Before 1992, arcade enthusiasts were used to the cartoony style and pretty mild violence of Street Fighter. Then, in comes Mortal Kombat with more detail and a lot more gore. Because of the bloody nature of the gameplay, and because it's an excellent game, Mortal Kombat became a huge draw in arcades and later a bestseller on home consoles. Riding its controversial wave of blood, Mortal Kombat made 2.2 billion quarters. That's enough quarters to circle the Earth if you lay them end to end, and this is only the third entry on the list. To put those quarters into Mortal Kombat terms, that's more than the combined weight of 5 Olympic swimming pools filled with blood. Or $570 million, if you want to be boring. Asteroids was one of the very first arcade hits in history. Stemming from the 70s, it's over 40 years old by now. That's as old as the Pontiac Trans Am, and it's just as much of a classic. It featured a futuristic-looking vector display, smooth-looking physics, and the ability to have 3-letter initial high-score lists. And legend has it that the legendary player ASS made his debut on Asteroids. The Asteroids world record was broken in 2010, 31 years after its release, by John McAllister during a 58-hour live stream. Up until 1991, Asteroids made 3.2 billion quarters in total. That's the combined weight of over 6 fully fueled mighty Saturn V rockets that launched Apollo 11 to the moon. Some of the earliest games are also some of the best. That's also the case with Defender, developed by William Electronics, who, at the time, in their own words, reigned supreme. Defender is a colorful game full of fast-moving shooting action. Not only was there a lot happening on the screen for an early game, this was also one of the first games that allowed people to move beyond the screen in side-scrolling fashion. Love for Defender has lasted into the 21st century, with a 3D remake released in 2002. Defender is the first game on this list to earn more than $1 billion in revenue. You can figure out for yourself how many quarters that is, but here's a hint. How high do you go if you stack all these quarters end to end? The answer? 44 million Shaquille O'Neals. NBA Jam made about the same amount of money as Defender, the previous entry on this list. The only difference is NBA Jam did it in less time. Published in 1993 by Midway, NBA Jam was a new breed of sports game that put emphasis on fast, exaggerated action. In-game basketball players could jump way higher than the backboard, and that all adds to laying the ultimate smackdown on your opponents. The many console sequels feature some crazy hidden characters like, believe it or not, but here's the footage, Bill and Hillary Clinton. An arcade sequel called NBA Jam Tournament Edition was supposed to have Mortal Kombat's Raiden, Reptile, and Sub-Zero as hidden characters, but these were scrapped at the request of the NBA. It would have been nice to rip Scott Pippen's spine out, but alas, you can't have it all. By the way, do you know how many kilometers of blood vessels are inside the human body? 96,000, the same distance as all the NBA Jam quarters stacked end to end. Number 4 on this list, the new femme fatale of the gaming world, Miss Pac-Man. The only difference with Pac-Man was the red bow, but it made Miss Pac-Man the second known female character after Ladybug. Developed by Midway in 1982, it's the sequel to the legendary Pac-Man. Initially, it was published without any permission from Pac-Man's right holder, Namco. But when it became the most successful American-produced game of 1982, selling more than 115,000 cabinets, it was eventually accepted as an official title by Namco. The character design wasn't such a big step, but there were improvements over the original. Miss Pac-Man featured 3 more levels, revamped sound effects and music, and new, more unpredictable behavior from the ghosts. Miss Pac-Man made over 4.8 billion quarters. That's more than the GDP of Greenland, or the combined weight of 638 international space stations. Hold on to your Hadoukens as we enter the top 3. There's not many games that are more beloved than Street Fighter II, which is probably why it earned a ridiculous $10 billion from all of its versions and ports. Street Fighter I wasn't a big success, but Capcom smelled opportunity in the fighting game market and committed a team of 40 to work on Street Fighter II. What made the game a vastly better fighting game than its prequel was the combo system, which was discovered by accident during development. A classic and very fortunate example of, it's not a bug, it's a feature. In subsequent Street Fighter games, the combo system even became the main feature. 9.2 billion quarters ran through the over 200,000 arcade machines of the World Warrior and Championship Edition cabinets. That's 52 million kilos worth of quarters, the weight of the Titanic. Space Invaders is surely one of the most iconic video games ever created. Selling over 360,000 cabinets before 1980, it was and still is a massive cultural phenomenon. Space Invaders was created by Tomohiro Nishikado, who also created the equally innovative Inceptor, the first game to feature sprite scaling. Like the combo system in Street Fighter II, Space Invaders also had a quirk that became one of the main features of the game. During testing, Nishikado realized that the aliens were moving down the screen faster, as there were less on the screen after you shot more and more of them. This had to do with the capacity of the processor of the cabinet. Nishikado kind of liked this unexpected increase in difficulty as the player was more successful, and so it remained. But even Space Invaders was subject to some controversy. In 1981, a bill was drafted in the UK to allow councils to restrict Space Invaders due to its addictive properties that caused deviancy. The motion to bring the bill before Parliament was rejected by 94 votes for and 114 against. A surprisingly close call. Space Invaders made over 60 million kilos worth of quarters. That sounds like a lot, but it took years. And just to add a depressing perspective to that number, that's the weight of the plastic currently being dumped into the ocean every 80 hours. The king of games? Pac-Man. Pac-Man is certainly one of the first truly iconic game characters. Who knew epic character design could be as simple as a pizza with a slice missing, and who was initially called Pac-Man? But the plot thickens. The real original Japanese title was Pac-Man, after the supposed sound eating makes, paku paku. So it's not waka waka after all. In total, there were over 400,000 machines sold. Pac-Man is the undisputed most successful coin-operated game ever. It made over $1 billion in quarters within its first year. These are truly historic records that will never be broken. Ports of the game were released on 42 platforms. If you can name all of them off the top of your head, kudos. In total, Pac-Man made 14 billion quarters. That's an astronomically mind-blowing number. If you stack all these quarters end to end, you'll have reached the moon with only 30 kilometers to spare. That was a festival of incredible numbers of quarters, and truly legendary arcade games that were the basis for the giant machine that the games industry is today. We owe the makers of these games for a lot of good times. Which arcade cabinet would you spend your quarters on if you could go back in time? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell.